Hello, everyone. So it's time for yet another edition of WiTalks. And my name is Prateek. I'm part of the Women in Technology team. And today I have the privilege of speaking with Annapoorni Rajkumar, fondly known as Anu. She is an associate director at IBM. Her exact designation, she is an associate director, global service engineering of networks at IBM. And spent over 2 decades at IBM. Is a tech women in tech, true women in tech as we call it. So we're going to interact over the next 1 hour, and we will be particularly talking about the crossroads that employees and mostly women face during their tech careers. Um, she's Anu has been privileged enough to see a lot of kind of crossroads herself. She guides a lot of women and folks at IBM in doing so. So I think her insights from there will be valuable. So welcome, Anu. Welcome to WIT, and thank you for agreeing to be a part of this session.
Thank you, Pratik. I think it's been great to be here. Thank you for the invite, and it's going to be next 1 hour. Going to be nice session with you and with the entire live audience. Thank you for
Sure.
that.
So, without wasting time, we'll just straight away, kind of get into the conversation. And the first thing that I would want to know, so I know that you've kind of done multiple roles. We've been speaking for a few days before this particular conversation, but I would like to hear from you that how have your, 2+ decades been at IBM? What were the different roles that you've done? How have you gone about your career journey? And more interestingly, like was tech something which was already your passion right from the beginning, or is it something that you developed on the way? We just want to hear that from someone who's been there, done that.
Well, I think 2 long decades, and it's still going on. Um, so I started my journey or my career in IBM as a college grad way back in '99. And when I joined IBM, it was, we call ourselves as Team Blue, and we were actually given an opportunity to work on some of the technical parts at that point of time. And it helped me to kind of start my career in the technical path itself. But over a period of time, there were a lot of challenges which came and kind of tried to move me away from technical path. But I think I just hold myself, right? So it was a journey of last 20 years. But if I actually have to put it together, I had done about close to 9 different roles within IBM. And for somebody of my generation continuing to kind of have the same company chosen is something really, really difficult, right? But however, as an organization, it has helped me to give a lot of opportunities in various paths, right? So I started my career in the network domain, but I actually went to multiple other domains. And then now again, I'm back in the network career, the network path itself, right? And when I started my career, it was like I was working on projects as a network delivery engineer who will be going and setting up the network infrastructure for clients. And it used to be like I used to be assisting somebody because as I'm new to industry and new to the technology, the confidence the clients will have in a very young person is very difficult to build. So it is very important that you have to kind of go through a lot of knowledge gaining in the form of learning, as well as going through a lot of certifications at that point of time, which I think continues to be the roads today as well, and go through all the probable documentations and everything available to kind of build that confidence with the client. Moving there, I also had situations where I moved from a delivery engine team to a role which is as an architect, right? And that was a really turning point for me because till then I used to go and land in client places only after the sale happens. Now it's important for me to go back and look at how I can actually bring that sale to the company, right? So that gave me more challenges with respect to understanding the client's needs, the business needs, and put together end-to-end solution, which could be end-to-end solution with respect to any type of technologies. And the client's requirements also keep changing, right? And it's not that they want to continue with the same. So I used to kind of work in an environment where it used to be completely lot of men who kind of put together solutions together, and it used to be nice fun for me as well. And then was the roles which was coming on my way, where I was asked to pick up domains outside network, where I had gone and taken work on the resiliency or mobility. Those are some of the different domains I tried. And then kind of got into a situation where I think I need to now look at how I can put myself into a much larger picture, not just within the architectural domain, but also in the global side of the business. So that's when I actually went back and picked up some responsibilities in the global side of it. And today I am the service engineering leader for a domain called network within IBM.
Perfect. So, a couple of interesting things that kind of I heard while you were sharing. So, you started off setting up the networks when you joined as a graduate. As when you said you would probably go from an office to office, kind of assessing needs and setting up, to now getting the sales or getting the global contracts or so-called things for probably kind of setting up or scheduling of networks. So, how different is that? Like from fact of going and implementing to now just being there and kind of, I won't say bossing around, but giving directions. So how is it different from then to now? How do you see that transition moving? Did you ever see you'll probably be that some person who will probably give directions sitting?
Yeah, I think always everybody will have the dreams which actually would come true. So in my journey, when I started my career, I had somebody who I was looking upon too, that I think I should become somebody like that who kind of gives these directions to the team, right? Not just the manager, but I think I call it as someone whom you want to really become as. And that was the inspiration in which we started working. But over a period of this decades, 2 decades, there was a lot of transformation has happened in me as well as in the industry as well. So the networks itself, if I just take an example, which is my domain, it was all about physical, traditional environments. Today it's completely driven on the software side of it, right? So there was this responsibility for me as a person also to learn these new technologies and also ensure that my team also sails along with me. So it is not just giving direction here matters. It also kind of uh, go along with the team to find out what are the kind of challenges they face and how they can kind of overcome with. Since I would call myself as hands-on, it helped me to kind of cope up with these things better, I would say. But however, the management side of it is different from the operational side of it,
Correct.
right? And you need a strategic mind to kind of come out with a lot of insights, futuristic plans, etc., as compared to the operational side of the delivery side of it. So it is important that you kind of continuously evolve and learn, so that you will be able to kind of give the right directions to the team and as well as right inputs to the people around you. That's how it
Yeah.
works.
That's interesting because we will talk a bit more about that transition when you say that someone who is just implementing rather than someone who's having a strategic mindset and looking at a long-term goal. So I think that is a crossroad a lot of people face, especially in tech after a given point in time. So we will kind of discuss that as we move along in this conversation. But just sticking to probably your initial experience, you mentioned the fact that you were in an environment where there were a lot of men, or probably you were the only women. Share some, some interesting incidents in your career where you were probably in, I mean, we just want to probably hear some of those interesting, quirky moments that you had when you were probably in an environment with just men and you were probably there going out in offices and things like that. And we're talking about what, early thousands at that time,
Yes,
right? And
early 2000s. Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, I don't know, just share some, interesting anecdotes if you can from how that journey was there, and maybe that is something that will interest a lot of people.
Yeah, I think I want to share something very interesting which happened way back in 2002, where I was actually going to kind of put together a network infrastructure for a client place. Now, the kind of equipments are very big and heavy, right? And there comes the challenge, right? How are you going to lift and fix them into their respective racks, right? Now, this is a situation, which I think I faced, where I cannot go back to the client and say, please do help us, right? So it was very challenging for me. So then, after some half an hour of thinking, I went back and said, I'm going to call some of my colleagues who's going to come back and help us with these things, and let me come back on this. So the client was so sweet, and he said, I understand you're kind of trying to, um, you know, kind of settling yourself to go back and take help for installing these equipments, but I think I can provide you some help here. And he had some of his team members from his office who could kind of help here. Now, I was happy, and I was thinking, oh, the work got over today itself, rather than getting it delayed to the next day. But I think the other point was, the client actually called my manager and said, next time, don't send a woman alone for doing such work, right? So that was very, nice of him, one side. But the other side of it, when I reached back, when I report back to my manager about the completion, he kind of warned me, saying that, why did you land in such a place when you know that it is such a big set of equipments alone? Why didn't you not take help from somebody from other teams? Why did you not ask for help, right? So I thought that the manager is going to appreciate my effort, but I think the message was different.
So you actually had to
So
heavy lift something and put it out
same,
there.
yeah. So it was
Believing
very
that you will probably be able to do it.
yeah,
Okay.
little overconfidence, okay. Then so so that was the thing. So then I was learning a lesson that we should ask help, right? So till then I wasn't always going and asking help. From then, whenever there is something of this sort, I go back and take help from some of the men colleagues, ensure that I go with them. And the other interesting thing which happened was, so I used to be very good in troubleshooting some of these technologies. So we used to get calls in the middle of the night. Now this brings a new challenge, right? As a woman, how do you go and fix things in the middle of the night? So there are some clients who just ask for my name. No, I want her in the field, right? There was this client who had this. So the director calls me and says that you need to go, but don't go alone. Let me get another person to come to your home, pick you, and then go. Right?
This
It
is
was
what
3
time?
a.m. Yeah,
This is what time in the night?
this was 3 a.m. in the night.
Oh my God. Okay.
Right.
And Bangalore.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
this was in Chennai. When I
Okay.
used to start my career, I was in Chennai. So it was a very interesting situation where uh, I had to go and fix this problem. So now the thing is, there are places where you have to take help from the men colleagues, and I'm very happy that I've been surrounded always with somebody who is very helpful, and they always have helped me in such situations. And there used to be situations where sometimes I feel a little bad for such situations, like some clients call for a meeting when I used to work as a solution architect, to come 9 o'clock in the morning next day, and the call comes to me at late in the evening, previous day, and I just booked the flight and land next morning. Now I have to get up at 2 a.m. to pick the flight, the first flight, what is available at 6 in the morning. And that's the time I used to feel really, really sick. Why is this so? But after I land in the place, then I'm on my own, right? So you feel like, this is very difficult part of it, but sometimes it's important that you respect some clients really need you, right? So that are the good moments I could cherish, where I think I'm really important for the client as well as for the company, right? So that these are some of my experiences I want to share, where I have always been supported by men.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. And I think it's really interesting. Obviously, it's we're talking about women in tech, but we know that in these sectors, not just tech. It's about collaboration, and it's about men standing up for women. So that's great. Thank you for sharing. I think that's a very nice way to kind of get started with your introduction and how you've been about an IBM. I wanted to dwell into specifically the work that you're doing. The two aspects. One obviously is your job, which we will come to, and we, as a leader of the industry, will talk about what are the things that you feel are current and important. But I would, before that, dwell into the other work which we talked about in the past, which you do is about helping people with their careers, helping people, kind of mentoring and get those. I would say the difficult moment in those career and the so-called career crossroads, where you help a lot of aspiring young talent at IBM. And I do know a lot of people who, when they kind of go and traverse through their career, have those moments where they would probably want to specialize in a field and remain in tech, or want to probably take up leadership roles and be in management. So I think it will be interesting to know from you, from someone who's done both, and from someone who helps navigate, aspiring folks to kind of navigate that career path. About what do you do there, and how you go about doing that, and also what are the most frequent challenges that you hear from people who are trying to traverse their career and who kind of come at these crossroads. So share a little bit more about that if you can, please.
Yeah. So I think maybe I'll put it in two phases. One about my own side of it, and then come to the second part.
Yeah.
So if I had to stay in IBM, and that too long, 20 long years, it is not just easy and possible with all the challenges around within the organization and environmentally outside, right? And it is important that we get right direction from the leadership, and we also get right support from every part of it, right? And the utmost is the mentorship, right? So I would say that I give a lot of importance to my mentors, who has always been with me to guide me, and a kind of a person who is with me, who gives me direction at every path, right? And I have chosen two different mentors, one person for my technical path and the other person for my business knowledge. And it is very important that we kind of take their advice and try to kind of pick those inputs and start putting together in our day to day operations or life. So when I am actually taking that help, it is important that I also give the same kind of support to the colleagues around me, or the people who are looking for help. So there is this situation that every person who is starting their career and reach a midpoint has a confusion as whether they actually want to move to the management side or they want to move to the technical path, right? Similarly, I also had those confusions. However, one has to be very clear and in their thought that they actually have to achieve something in their path in the career itself, and ensure that they actually choose the right path. So sometimes the people come to me and ask this kind of questions: should I take the path in this technical roads, or should because we see a lot of kind of opportunities there, but we also see that the other side is giving a lot of promotions and progressions. That's how they kind of come and differentiate and ask these kind of questions. So we go back and I kind of do some mentoring with the team, help them or coach them as well to understand which is good and which is bad. Not that bad or good, but make them understand what is the potential you have and what is that you want to achieve in your career, which is spanning about like 40 years, especially people who are in India, right? How you want to actually put yourself into your career in the next 5 years or 10 years. If you feel that your potential is to kind of take yourself to a technical path, and these are the kind of roads available for you, opportunities available for you within the same organization or wherever it is, and what are the ones which is available in the management side. So often what happens is there are a lot of programs within our organization which helps them to decide these things. Sometimes they also kind of come back and take guidance from me. So I mentor a lot of people, and sometimes I have two or three people whom I coach, where I just go back and make themselves aware of what their strengths are and what their areas which they have to improve on. And they kind of understand after the discussion, okay, so this is what you expect me to do. Yes. So it comes from their own way, and that's how we kind of do these programs. And mentoring is very, very important part of the career path which we have to look at, because it helps two ways. Sometimes I also have one of my colleague doing working with me to do a reverse mentoring, because our we kind I wouldn't call it as I'm myself old, but I think in a different generation. So there is a kind of gap which we have now between the generations, and sometimes it's important that we pick some people, young people, to give us some advice in the reverse mentoring. So I
Yeah.
actually feel that this is very important for someone who actually takes these things important when they actually move in their career journey. So these are some of the things which we do, and specific there are a lot of programs within IBM which we do for kind of taking them through the different paths, and we advise them how they need to progress. And there are some industry certifications or industry level accreditations which they will have to go through, which will help them to kind of pick their paths in future.
Understood. So again, going to it a little bit more. So I just wanted to know what are those, some of the, I would say, problems or challenges that young men and women face who come to you for mentoring or who come to you for advice. Um, uh, just give us some examples of how people are at certainly those crossroads, and what are those things that are going into their mind. As you said, there is no good or bad, there is no right or wrong. It all depends on an individual's preference of what kind of career they want to make out. And at times it is not clear. I mean, I have had those situations where it was not clear whether I go this way or that way. So tell us a little more about what kind of, I would say, conundrums they are facing in their head, what kind of dilemmas they are facing, and how do you help them address? This is more coming from a point that if someone is out there listening to you right now and has something in his head, what should they do, or what should be those things which they should do to just kind of identify a clearer path going forward?
Yeah, so basically, I go with that SWOT analysis, which is basically, what are the strength, what are the weaknesses they have, or maybe the areas of improvement, and what are the kind of opportunities the person is looking at. So I had one of my manager who was actually talking about this very clearly to us, that someone needs to make a career blueprint, right? And it is very important that when they, not that when they join a particular organization they have to do, but at least when they are at least in the midpoint of their career, they need to know what is going to be their blueprint for the next 30 years or so. And if I actually have to divide that into six different quadrants and put each of them like 3 years or 5 years kind of thing, it will help someone to know, okay, I'm at a level 1 today, to myself reach the level 4. What is that three things I have to do, which is very important that my organization will look at me, or my management is going to look at us. So, and this would come in some of the discussions they will have with their own leaders, or it would come through the discussions from the mentors, as I mentioned, when they actually have some mentors who is kind of mentoring them in any particular area. Now, giving those different aspects, they're supposed to go back and look at those real weak areas and pick those areas and turn to green, right? In the form of identifying the challenging opportunities, go and put yourself into this challenging situation and see how you could perform and come out of those things. So I had this in my own personal experience, where I have been always handling the domestic clients in IBM, and I
Mhm.
wasn't aware of how to actually work with a global environment. So that's the time I had gone and picked up a role which was challenging enough to go back and do a global operations role for a different team within IBM and
Mhm.
understand. So it used to be a very different perspective, where every day you will be into some of the escalations or some of the conversations with the client, trying to kind of patch up things, etc. but that's the where you kind of know how the global aspect is, what are the how IBM is considered in globally, and that gives you also an experience how to handle some of the different culture teams and how to work with multicultural environment, and thereby it can give you an improvement in the area which you were looking for. So similarly, someone needs to have identify that's what the strengths as well as weaknesses, and come out with the theories or come out with these different aspect challenging positions which will help them to move ahead. That's one part of it. The other side is also to kind of go through some of the critical courses which is available online or maybe within the organization itself, which is going to help them change or do some transformation. And learning is a continuous affair. It's not that we learn and we kind of close and just
Correct.
do away with that, right? And the management theory is what we all knew maybe 10 years ago is not the same now. It is kind of changing to a new way as such. So it is important that somebody has to really look at what are the real trends which is happening in the current industry, as well as what are the things which are changing which will help them to kind of move through those crossroads. I also see that someone who comes back and says, especially the women colleagues, where when they're in the middle part of the career, they would have actually got into a situation where they are not able to prioritize which is important, family or career, right? So this is a critical dilemma which I think most of us like women go through. So in my aspect now, I think the generation which we are in, the current generation has three things, three priorities. One is family, second is career, and third one is the social part of it, right? You and me are talking today in a live media, right? And it is
Mhm.
important that we give importance to our social eminence as well, right? So I would say that how do we prioritize all the three? It's practically impossible. So it is like one day you go with an English breakfast, bread, and focus on your work, right? And the other day you do a complete meal for your family. So you have to kind of prioritize and juggle between the different parts of it, right? So that's how I think most of us can overcome some of these situations.
Very interesting. So I think you mentioned, and a couple of takeaways that I have obviously is that the SWOT analysis is something. Sorry, I'm hearing my own echo. Sorry, yeah. So the SWOT analysis is something which a lot of people do, and that is is a part of there. But I think the bigger part is coming to that SWOT, and which is where probably the thing which you mentioned, your managers and your mentors and others who can really help you coming at those. And I think that is the critical part, that you can draw up goals, but till the time you need help to come to those goals or to arrive at those goals, which is where seniors like you or the mentors which people will have will kind of help. And I know you mentioned about prioritizing, and you touched a little bit about how priorities are different for women as compared to men. So I would just want to just dive a little bit and take that course, that you would have mentored, you would have guided a lot of employees at IBM, aspirants and others. How do you feel the challenges for women when it comes to their career and prioritizing and probably getting things right is different as compared to men? Being a woman who has traversed that journey, had a long career, you would have prioritized, or you would have kind of gone ahead balancing both home and work. But we see, one of the things that we are trying to address at Women in Technology is to so-called plug the leaky pipeline. A lot of women do start at the bottom end, but by the time they kind of move towards the middle and the senior management, we see a lot of women drop out for various reasons. And which is something, it's a universal problem. It's not just in India, you see it across the globe as well, that kind of thing. So where I just wanted to understand that what are those challenges? I mean, we are not here to address that in a day. I don't think it's something that can be addressed in a day or even a year. But just a little bit of a detail as to what are those challenges? How do you see some women addressing those, and what is your advice to them?
Yeah, so sometimes I wanted to put this into aspects. Maybe I think I'll put it this way. As IBM as an organization, it has really helped me as a person, right? That's one part of it. But there are a lot of programs which a lot of organizations are doing today for actually holding the diversity talent, especially the women talent who wants to take these things. So what I see is it is important that we go through the different career programs which happens within the organization. So when somebody is, so for example, the challenge with women which women go through is like they join the career, and then maybe after 4 5 years they actually get into the family, and that's when they have this dilemma of what needs to be done. Right, today I think 6 months of ml is really helping a lot of us to ensure that we kind of take care of our babies before we actually come back to work. And a lot of organizations are also kind of giving opportunities to women who can work from home, and they're also kind of giving that flexible working hours. At least within IBM, we have a lot of such flexibility for women folks, where when I actually myself took the maternity break and came back after 2 years, I was just plugged back to the same role which I was doing 2 years
Great.
ago, right? And many times it is practically not possible for the business to come back and pick the same person in the same role. But
Yeah.
I'm sure every organization is doing a lot of work in fixing this, plugging this leaky
Yeah.
pipe. Right, it is
Mhm.
very important that we give that space to that women who comes back from that two problems like I myself had. One, 2 years you're out of industry and you don't know what's really happening, in the industry trend itself. To catch
Mhm.
up with that, with the technology and all those things itself takes about 3 4 months, and then come back to your work, which is again, the working part of it. It takes another 3 4 months because you would have taken that break. Now it's that is a time, somebody needs to give that additional space for that, those kind of challenging women who kind of needs that time to kind of come back into the same position as back. So
Yeah.
today I think a lot of programs has been put within IBM. We are doing a lot of work in the space to ensure that such people are taken care, or somebody who is actually moving out with the reason saying that they don't want to continue because they are actually prioritizing their family. We go back and have discussions. At least I used to have get at least in a month one or two women cases coming back to me asking what's where what we need to do, etc. Sometimes it
Mhm.
will be small issues that the family her husband is located in a different city and she is in another city, and hence they are wanting this job itself to go off. Right, at such situations it's important that organizations should come forward and help. So we have always been going back and saying that if you could wait for number the 2 3 months, we would support you in getting some kind of transfer to the other location, provided that's another metro city where there's a presence, or we kind of give some options to the person. Right, at least from my team there was one person who wanted transfer to Kolkata, right, and she was actually hired just 2 years, and she completed her internship and all those things, and we had put her into her main tent career, and that's the time she's coming back and saying that I want to go back since I got married. Now it was very difficult for us to identify another person for that role, from the perspective that we just has onboarded her into one of the global client account, but still we
Mhm.
went back and did all the work to see how we can fix the plug. And then we also kind of has to have that creation of role in the other side, right? It's also
Correct.
important, so she had to go back to Kolkata to join her family. So that was the scenario. So we at times it is important as leaders, I think we also should help these challenging women, in my view. And it's also important that we kind of give them the appropriate advice on how they need to really move ahead with, right?
Mhm.
So things like the roles which could be probably doable for them in such situations, when they are actually coming back from, especially from breaks. We shouldn't be putting them into a night shift kind of a job role, which is again making them difficult to manage, right? So if we could actually work on these pieces, I think it is very easy to kind of fix those things. And I'm sure a lot of organizations are working on multiple such programs in doing these things, at least, a different type of programs at different level of career itself, right? So that's how we have to look at it.
Okay. So, I mean, just as last quick one to wrap this particular section. So, what would be your advice, say, for someone who's trying to come back after 6 months of maternity leave and is, kind of especially in tech where they just, as you mentioned, probably been outdated a little bit, just want to catch up with what's going on and things like that. How would you, and is struggling probably to just manage home and office both in terms of ambitions and your personal life, which is you kind of juggle between that priority. What would be your word to them? How would you approach that?
Yeah, so I put myself into that same shoes, right, where we have to give priority to the family, at least when the child is born, for at least for 1 year, because that is very important period that the baby is needing the mother's help, right? And
Mhm.
we shouldn't be picking roles which kind of takes us away from that particular situation. So I feel it is important that someone needs to really choose such roles, so that they don't kind of have a problem at the home, because that's very important. The second part is also to see how you could kind of utilize this some amount of time while when you are on the break, right? 6 months of maternity break. I had this one of the call which happened last year, where somebody came on call and said during that 6 months of maternity break I had two patents filed. I was really surprised, right? So the thing is, she says the baby is sleeping, so I had all the time to read and do a lot of things. So it's not that I'm advising that they should learn during that period, but see if you could catch up at least an hour or so in a day, if possible, so that you can kind of balance and ensure that you're not loading yourself more after you come back. The mistake I did was I just shut off my laptop, and then it was very difficult for me to come back and start even looking at every point of it, right? So when I actually went on maternity, it was IPv4 in the network domain. When I came back, it was IPv6. So for me, it was very difficult to understand from 4 to 6 how am I going to kind of take this itself, right? So I advise, I think, if possible, at least an hour if they could spend, that will give them that confidence that they can continue in the career. One. Two, also the load on them is less when they come back, in the path.
Okay.
Two, they may have to take some opportunities which is lighter, which will help them to kind of cope up both. And then when I think the child grows up, obviously they'll have all the time available for them to focus back, right? So pick the opportunities in such a way that will ensure that you don't actually compromise on these things in the beginning of the part of the child career itself. Yeah.
So I'll take that patent example. My wife is currently 2 months, 3 months into her maternity leave, and all she's been
Oh,
doing is watching Money Heist and Patal Lok. So I think that is something that I'll probably tell her that just let little less of Netflix and more of some probably a little
yes.
more.
Yeah.
But on that note, and as we transition into kind of understanding your knowledge, there is one question that has come up on the live chat, and I think which is very pertinent as we make the switch, which is asking about. So Rachna asks, how do you think that organizations right now are geared, given that we have just kind of rapidly fast forward into these COVID times, and suddenly organizations are finding some of them, kind of finding themselves struggling with the infrastructure. Now, you being in networks would probably know the best if organizations that ways are we living up with the times? Are we there yet when it comes to flexibility? Is there technology around for people to kind of work? Are organizations ready to invest? Because you know more than anyone else that it needs a certain amount of investment and intent. So where do you think we are in terms of providing that infrastructure? I know big organizations will find it a little easy, but I want to ask you that question more from a technical expert, someone who is kind of designing those networks or implementing those networks, to see where organizations are and how long is that journey where everyone can from a technology standpoint be very comfortable. Are you seeing that trend where companies are investing in there?
Yeah, so I think maybe we are going to get into that topic of completely remote working methodology. But what we see is the current situation, like we all of us in the last 3 months, wasn't even able to go out of our homes, right? And I'm sure we were able to make up with all the work what we were supposed to do, the deliverables. So what it means is we had all the avenues available, like we had our laptops and a good connectivity and internet at home, but for whatever reasons there was some situations in which we were kind of traveling to our respective offices. Now, when this pandemic came, there was the sudden thing where everything moved to a work from home environment, right? Bigger organizations as well as the smaller organizations started picking up laptops or desktops on rental basis and started giving to their employees, to
Mhm.
ensure that they are not they're just able to make the work going as such. So what it means is it gives a lot of load in the back end infrastructure. I was just reading an article that Airtel needs to come up with a lot of more upgrades which they need to do in their back end infrastructure from the telco side of it. So what happens is currently a lot of improvements has to be made in the other side of it, but I see a trend of, I think, with this COVID pandemic in place, a trend of virtual offices is going to go more, and people are going to look at why to really spend a lot of money in these real estate offices and see how we could have more of virtual offices at times. So it is important that we kind of ensure how we could cope up with that. Sometimes it's important that we also have to give that 100% here. For example, obviously we need to have a good network connection or internet and have a backup if possible, so that we kind of don't completely get disconnected out of it when there is some outage, right? As a
Yeah.
resilient plan, and also have some kind of resiliency and support system available. So going by what the current industry is moving to, I think virtual office is going to pick up very much, and that is a good blessing for people who are really having these kind of challenges, home, family, how to manage things, right? And this 8 or 9 hours of dedication will help us to manage everything better, right? And in the last 3 months, I think we are able to do it, right? So it is actually the proof for us to see how we can kind of strengthen this whole thing.
So let's talk about that. You mentioned virtual offices, and you mentioned people, kind of working more remotely. Offices or companies taking up laptops and rental, and basically equipping employees to, work more at their will and more at their place rather than coming to office. Um, Taking that as a backdrop, where do you see, the latest trends that are going in terms of, not just virtual offices or not just upgrade in infrastructure, but where do you think from your domain are probably the two or three top things that probably will occupy the top shelf when it comes to priority for organizations or priority for tech industries in the coming few months or years?
So I would take it something like this: the edge computing, right? So this is something which is quickly making a lot of impact in the world, right? Today, I think a lot of our data centers or a lot of our infrastructures are comparatively sitting in high-end real estate places, where we are trying to make it from private to a public, and now we are trying to see how we can bring that compute into an edge part of it, right? So if you see what is the trend which is moving is a lot of companies are now looking at edge computing as one of the latest trends, and it has to be viewed as, and from an enterprise IT point of view, it is actually going to be a culmination of at least getting the core infrastructure moved to the edge part of it. So thereby we will have a lot of our intelligence sitting in the edge, and the computing power itself is will be the edge. This will help us to ensure some of these issues which we have, like low latency or intermittent connectivity issues across different footprints, and also improve our resilience and applications availability. So edge computing is one of the plays which I would say is kind of picking up a lot of momentum now. And edge computing is going to complement, or maybe it will get complemented by the 5G part of it, right? I'm sure we all know what is 5G.
Yeah.
Basically, this is the new spectrum. Like today, we are sitting in the 4G LTE kind of world, and this is a new spectrum which the network telco companies are moving to go to, right? And what we see is one of the use case for edge computing is nothing but this 5G telco movement, moving their complete infrastructure from the current mode to an edge part of it, right? And when we have this 5G spectrum, I think the need for it for 5G is very clear to all of us, right?
Mhm.
Because of the availability of the bandwidth, what we need, and the devices which we want to connect, be it IoT or any of those devices, because the kind of trillion devices which we want to connect in the next few years is going to be very huge. At least I see 26 trillion odd devices should get connected in the next 5 6 years. So for that, we need to have a huge bandwidth spectrum available for connecting all of this. So if I have to put it together in the trends which is moving from edge to 5G and IoT, these three things are actually going to really do a lot of revolutions in our current state, and it is also going to give us a lot of different transformations which is happening in this industry itself, right? And what I also foresee here is with, I think, the COVID situation coming in, a lot of companies are going to really go virtual, which is going to demand for a huge bandwidth and spectrum
And
availability. So
yeah,
it actually kind of uh,
complement.
came into a right situation. Like companies were implementing 5G things from 2019, and we are almost in the 2020, where I think this is going to really fall in place, in my view. So that's the kind of new trends which someone who is actually starting their career should be looking at. These are the new technologies which they should try to gain their skills, and they need to kind of identify some of the critical areas. And I think I missed the technology which is blockchain, which is very close to my
Yeah,
heart,
yeah.
being an IBMer. So this is also equally an important part of it, where we have a complete distributed ledger system, right? So be it a finance person who is kind of having their system in a particular computer, where it is available now across with all the securities in place. So this is going to be the four different things which is going to take us to the next step, apart from the cloud and other things which is
Which
already
is
in
already
the
there.
era already. Yeah.
Correct. So I think you've covered most of it, and I think it makes a lot of sense in terms of how working will change, how computing will change, how people will approach technology, given that the way things are. So let's address that from the current situation which we have, which is COVID. Like you say that necessity is the mother of invention, and right now a lot of those work from home things. I mean, COVID has helped to accelerate that. No amount of policy or no amount of documents could implement the kind of things COVID did in a matter of weeks. So you're kind of seeing organizations kind of juggling through to get systems going and get work flowing. So in the backdrop of that, I know that we are doing a lot of things currently which are just a reaction to the current situation, right? But I'm pretty certain, and that there will be a few things that will sustain even after these times are over. Now it could be a matter of a year, it could be a couple of years, 3 years, we don't know. But what are some of those things which you see that are changing now, which will go on even after, let's say, the pandemic is kind of technically over, or the situation kind of improves? Because some of the things I'm pretty sure will kind of go back. We'll start going back to restaurants again, pretty sure, whenever things, kind of improve, or we'll go to bars and things like that. But I'm pretty certain that some things will probably change for certain. So from your point of view, what are those things which you feel you know, will sustain the changes that we are making right now, will probably sustain, and will kind of live in the new world as well?
Yeah, so I think in the last 3 months, the some of the lessons which we have learned is um, people were actually working remotely and was able to meet some of the all the deliverables which they could, right? And so I think a lot of companies are now thinking back and taking the step of continuing this virtual office and analyzing which is the critical teams who really need to be in office, right? And they are going to bring them back into the office because there might be some restricted reasons that they have to work only from office, from the contractual perspective, or it could be from the perspective of the work itself, the work style itself. So some of the areas, at least I see here, is responsibilities which we are working from home. When we are able to make the same kind of deliverables and same kind of impact, right, without making any compromise, I'm sure those virtual offices is going to continue. And I also see that when this pandemic happened, there was only days given to us, right? When this announcement of first curfew, it was just 2 days ago the announcement happened, and we kind of had to bring everything within the 2 3 days to make things work, right? So we will not be given enough time anymore when new such pandemics can come, right? So it's important that all organizations are now also planning what kind of resiliency is possible, how we could kind of ensure that the resilient plans are in place so that in future some such situations happens. For example, we had the floods in Chennai, and
Correct.
there was this very difficult situation where people are there and there's no network connectivity itself. At least COVID is that way better, where we have the network connectivity in place as compared to those situations. But still,
Yeah.
there was logistics which was planned to get the people to other locations and then ensure that they are able to start working from the new
Correct.
premises. So all the organizations are in the mode of, I think, planning, doing a lot of resiliency works. And it is also what we are seeing is most of the office spaces are going to really get closed, and see how we can have virtual offices working from home. And part-time working is also kind of new trend which uh, I was reading, where I think we are trying to see how we can get work only 3 hours or 4 hours, which will help people to kind of pick up small profiles. For somebody who doesn't want to work, that commit themselves to work for 8 or 9 hours, how we could actually get the same deliverable with, because these are all now deliverable based, right? It is not like
Correct.
you come to office and then slowly you start getting into
Yeah.
the workspace and do all those. The other input is it also has helped a lot of productivity improvements, where you kind of glued into your laptop or computer and then you kind of start working on things. So it saves a lot of time. At least people who are in Bangalore, it is a real big happiness, right? Because you don't spend time in the roads. So the
Yeah.
industries which I
More
think
stable
will,
outer ring road, for example.
yeah, true. But I think I would just connect this to the circular economy, where I think we don't spend is going to affect back us itself, right? Where
Yeah.
if we don't really spend buying new clothes, or don't spend that petrol expense, it's going to affect those industries, and that is going to come back to us as a problem itself. So
Really.
it's important that we kind of look at it from a holistic picture. Yeah.
Okay. I think that makes sense. So I think we're just about to end, and I think one of the questions that I would like to take up, which is probably a nice culmination or a good question in the end to probably address, is that I read somewhere that being a woman is not a gender; it's a job title. I don't know how true is that, but it of and a lot of of my colleagues and others whom I'm hearing is saying that it's increasingly tough for women right now to manage both house and work, especially works more in the Indian context where not too proud to say, but Indian men don't help much. At least that's the general. But how do you think in terms of just coping up with probably kids, waking up early, getting everything done, probably no domestic help. How, do you think it's getting increasingly tough for women and less for men? Is there a gender angle there too? And if yes or no, like what are your views and how to probably tackle that?
I wish my husband is not watching this live. Okay, so
I'll tell you if he
yeah,
turns up from behind. No worries, I'm keeping an eye.
yeah. So I think it is very important that there's no gender part of it, I would say, where the work is actually spread, but the entire workload is the workload for the home, right? And I'm sure there is a kind of help each other which happens, and prioritization itself. Like in the last 3 months, I have done a lot of things as priority. This we don't do it. This we don't do it. Right? And sometimes it is important that we put our importance prioritizations to fix these things. But I'm sure with this COVID part of it, I would pick that an example. A lot of people have actually started helping their home because they are seeing that there is no maids available, and I'm sure they are kind of supporting each other, and that has actually created more of harmony in the family as well. That's what I could see as a difference, where I think the job is now divided into two. Earlier it used to be that it's your job or your responsibility, but I think now it's kind of shared responsibility. So it's not a gender specific, but I think it's the way we look at it. So probably sometimes we may need to also ask help, right? So sometimes we don't do it as women. We kind of take ourselves as a superwoman and say that I will do everything myself. So that actually is one of the reasons sometimes we end up a lot of work ourselves, right? So we go back and kind of say that this is something which I cannot do it today. Can you please help? Sometimes it's important that we take that help each other, right?
Awesome. All right, cool. So I think we've had a very good discussion, Anu, and lovely to hear your thoughts around a variety of topics. And it's amazing that you're doing so well, both personally and professionally. Um, just as an end note before we end, and we kind of wrap this conversation up, I definitely have to ask you that one mantra which you've kind of is this a success mantra for you, something that you've stuck by, something that you would have kind of done in the good and bad times. What is it? Something that you kind of is really close to your heart, that success mantra which you would like to share. Is there any?
Okay, so I always say that believe in myself, right? And do whatever is the best possible. So these are the two things, and the rest I think God will decide. Not that God fearing person say that, but I think the confidence which we should have in ourselves is very important, right? When we pick something new, it's going to be challenging, right? So believe in yourself and come with that confidence, right? And these type of things comes to me as a question every time, right? So it's very important to believe in ourselves.
Thank you so much. I think it's really important. We have a lot of time we're spending with ourselves, so I think it's really important that we do
Yeah.
that. So thank you so much, Anu. It was lovely interacting with you. I hope a lot of our viewers have taken a few notes. They've kind of understood what is it about the latest in tech, and how about kind of navigating through careers and crossroads. We will encourage the users, if there are any questions as a follow up to this session, please let us know. We'll be happy to connect you. So on that note, I'll take your with any and thank you so much, Anu, for being a part of this. It was lovely interacting with you.
Thank you very much.